The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is James Smith, the personal trainer, best-selling author, and one of the biggest names in the fitness industry. With over 1 million followers on Instagram, you've become one of the most recognizable faces in fitness thanks to your no-nonsense approach to helping people achieve their goals. Your career began after you grew tired of the corporate grind and decided instead to pursue a life that made you happy and fulfilled. You're passionate about exposing the toxic myths within diet culture and committed to helping people reach their goals and make a positive and lasting change. Your two previous books, Not a Diet Book and Not a Life Coach, both reached the #1 spot on the Sunday Times bestseller list, and your latest book in the series, How to Be Confident, explores how we can all master our true ambitions and realize our strengths in a world that is all too often filled with negativity. James, welcome to London Real.
Very surreal, but very happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. We got a lot of things in common, which I'm sure we'll talk about on the show. A book about confidence. Let's jump right in and talk about it, because in researching this book, you must have had to really think hard about what is confidence? Do you have confidence? Who has confidence? And there's like tons of nuances in this book that I'd love to dive into. But like on the surface, what is confidence? And when we see someone with confidence, like a Conor McGregor, is that real confidence? Is that something anyone can attain? Now, what did you discover when you were writing this book?
So I think confidence sits on many different spectrums, and one of which that I like is I put confidence on one side and anxiety on the other. And I say that anxiety is predicting an outcome of it going wrong, and confidence is predicting an outcome of it going right. And how you predict something is going to go is tied to expectations. So when we're looking at people, they're not different to us. They haven't got different DNA or anything like that. They've got a different lens in which they see the world, a different set of perceptions and values, and those things we control. Many of them are beliefs, and beliefs can be changed. So a lot of people are programmed, whether it's an evolutionary thing, a societal thing, to predict a bad outcome. I think that that probably saved many humans over thousands of years, but in everyday life, that tendency to lean towards a pessimistic outcome, I think is hindering people's ambitions and potential, but society doesn't really care if you're not confident, and businesses don't care, the taxpayer doesn't care, all of these things. Like, no one's going to come and make you more confident. And it's a very nuanced, strange topic, and people have said to me, only in the last few years, you've got a lot of confidence. So I was like, probably not. I probably have a good relationship with failing, and I probably have a good relationship with predicting a good outcome, because I'm happy to be wrong if it doesn't work out.
Yeah. That's something I think you can learn, is being comfortable taking risk and being comfortable with a failure. And that makes you take more risks and actually have more wins and successes, and then people see you and say, look how confident you are. When in fact, maybe you've just mastered the art of risk taking. And
yourself sat here, very natural, calm, composed. Someone goes, oh, he's just a confident guy. And you go, no, he's done 1,000 podcasts. He's mastered the repetition. Same with martial artists. Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, about 4-5 years ago, he won that match in a matter of seconds, and people were very quick to divide the amount of money he made by the seconds, and were like, oh, he got paid $2 million a second. And you're like, no, there was years before that. There was countless hours, months. There were training sessions that went well, that didn't go well. And all of these things accumulated over time were what got that performance. He wasn't, just confident, he was ready. And I think those are two very different things. And the key point that when I was asked to write a book on confidence, I sat and I thought about it and I went, so many people are using a lack of confidence as a guise to hide behind, to exist with making decisions that point to inaction. If people aren't doing something proactively, it's very easy to just say you're not confident enough to do it. There are so many deltas or forks in the road that we get to where we can either make a choice or we don't. And when people continually don't make choices, they need a label to give themselves as to why they didn't make a choice when others did. And they use confidence as a reason to not do anything.
Is that a standard narrative you hear people, or you know people say to themselves, is I'm not confident, I'm just not confident, I lack the confidence, and then that just becomes procrastination, stalemate, and then nothing happens?
100%. And one of the things that I used in the book was the Zeigarnik effect, where waiters that work in restaurants, when they close the bill, they forget what people have ordered. So they only really remember the bills that are still open. And the reason for that is once the bill's been paid, they don't need to remember it anymore. And I talk about this as being open and closed loops. So the waiters have an open loop. They need to have mental computing to remember that in case the machine makes a mistake. But when they've closed the loop, they get closure and they can put it to bed and they don't need the computing anymore. So I hypothesize in the book that maybe many people are creating a lot of open loops. You see someone on the tube and you go, wow, I'd love to talk to that person. Maybe I could give her my number, or you're in a meeting and you want to say something and express something that you disagree with. It might be your boss, you had a one-on-one with him and you wanted to express that you feel undervalued. In essence, we are opening these loops, like the Zeigarnik effect. And I want to get people in a position where they get the opportunity to close it, because when you close it, you can eradicate that computing power in your mind. And anyone that's got married, again, I hypothesize, I'm not married, there's always kind of mental machinery working for people that are single. Who am I going to end up with? Who am I going to marry? When am I going to meet this person? And when men get married, and I'm sure women as well, they close the loop of that worry and decision making about who they're going to be with, and they can relax more. And as I hope so, when you're married, you have this whole part of your brain that you can continue to use. So when people, I need to motivate people somehow to make more decisions that point towards action, I see it as closing loops. So you have a thought in your mind, put it to bed. You want to ask something, put it to bed. And if the outcome's bad, that's completely fine, because bad outcomes or failures or things not going to plan do two things. They point the finger in the direction of how you can improve on that, and they also add to a level of competency. So many of the lessons I've learned in life, I learned by accident. And before being in the corporate world, I ended up in door-to-door sales for N-Power in Gloucester in winter. Ooh. Yeah,
at least it wasn't during inflation times. That would have been even harder.
So yeah, I would not have been allowed into so many houses, but I had a conversation. And my mum and dad worked really long and hard to provide a great life for me. And when I finished university, I kind of messaged my dad and I was like, oh, times are tough out here. You know, I've just finished university. I haven't got a job. And he was like, oh, go to the job centre. And I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, but Dad, you know, what if I don't find a job? He was like, oh, well, you can sign on. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you can sign on the dole. He goes, I paid tax for the last 50 years. It's for people like you. And I was like, oh. So I went to the job centre, these little touch screens in Gloucester city centre, where I was at uni. First job that came up was working for N-Power door to door. And I was thinking to myself, what would I rather do, this or sign on? And I was like, this. So I even went to interview for the job. We spoke before about, I was thinking about wearing a suit. The day of my interview, I didn't have any dark socks. I only had white socks, tennis socks with a suit. On my first interview that I've ever had as an adult, I'm wearing tennis socks with a grey suit. I'm having to like pull my trousers down the whole time. I couldn't cross my legs. I get the job and I have to go out and pretty much convert people from their existing supplier to N-Power. Luckily, British Gas just put their prices up. So I knock on people's doors. And some people would think I'm there to read the meter. They go, come in. They go, oh, I'm not with N-Power. I go, exactly. They're like, get the fuck out, you know, don't come in. But with this, I remember having a bit of a meltdown, maybe 2-3 months in. And my boss said to me, he goes, for every 100 doors you knock on, you make a sale. You need 3 more sales for today. Go knock on 300 more doors. I thought about that and I thought, every time I get rejected, it's not a bad thing. It's not a self-worth thing. It's me putting myself that little bit closer to that sale. And knowing that it's hundreds of doors away makes it a little bit easier. But also I thought, as I go through my career of doing this, that 100 doors is going to become 90 because I'm going to become more competent, then it'll become 80. And then where we see these guys who are like smooth talkers, going in, gas and electric, signing people up, there's a level of competency that increases with failing. And if people could only see failing as a pathway to getting better, suddenly getting rejected by the girl or asking your boss for a pay rise and them saying they don't have the budget, all of these things, they pay into developing your skills of communication, rejection, failure. And that bulletproof nature that you can grow over time is what will mean in a few years' time, people will look at you and go, it's all right for him, he's confidence.
Right, okay. So people should get out there and close all of those open loops that are coming up in their brains right now, because that'll give your brain more bandwidth then, and it'll also mean you're gonna learn something from those things. And like you said, either be confronted with something you're not doing good enough or get some competence. So it's interesting, I've had a lot of authors in that chair, and a lot of them say, the reason I wrote the book is so I could now focus on new things. Because all the ideas, they couldn't get them out of their head until they put them down in a form that they knew were safe, basically. And now they could open their head to work on new ideas. So I always thought that was interesting as far as kind of closing that loop out to then move on to something else. But tell me about fear, because like you said, back in the savannah, we were scared of everything. And that meant that the bump in the night, all these things, it kept us maybe on our toes from the saber-toothed tiger or making sure, that our kids were fed, and it was functional. In this day and age, especially with all of our phones beeping and popping and all these things, most of our fear receptors or fear indicators, they aren't life and death situations, but we take them as life and death situations. And add that within social media, and we'll talk about that. That maybe slowly grinds down people's confidence and their ability to take risks. And so then you get a bunch of people that are stuck, maybe stuck not making decisions, stuck in procrastination. Is that kind of what we see? And do you think it's important for people now to re-engineer risk into their lives based on understanding the world that way?
Yeah, and I mean, the pessimism bias is something that I find fascinating. I joke around when I do the live talks. I try and bring like an element of like stand up into it, and I joke and I say, whenever I get a little pain in my side, I think, oh, this is it. I'm gonna die. Or we all get that little sharp pain and we're like, what is this? Is something serious? Oh my God,
Cancer.
this is how it ends. And then like 2 days later, you're like, oh, that pain never came back. Or you get a phone call at 10 p.m. and you're like, who died? We always have this, no one's ever thinking, oh, this is gonna be the best news of my life. We always have this tendency to favor a pessimistic outcome. And, I experienced this when I was in my single days dating. The second before you're about to go on a date, you're like, this is gonna be the worst date ever. And you do have to kind of reverse engineer that and go, what if this is the best date that I ever go on? And we're very, very bad at doing that. And like you say, from an evolutionary perspective, being overconfident probably wouldn't have been the best, especially with, heuristics. How far away is that island? Could I swim to it? Yeah, Next thing you're caught in a rip and that's the end of your DNA. So I think that a lot of the time, that tendency to be pessimistic is a safety net, but we need to reverse engineer it. Like you say, there's a chapter I talk about kind of Pyrrhic victories, where the victory is tantamount to defeat, where a picture that I saw once was a dog jumping off a cliff to bite a bird. And yeah, he gets the bird, but yeah, he also dies in the process. We don't really have any Pyrrhic issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. The outcome is never going to be truly that severe. And, even let's say yourself, you want a guest for the show, you're on their Instagram, suddenly you arrive at your destination, you might go, do you know what? Right now, I'm gonna message that person and ask them to come on, I'm gonna close that loop. Even if you do have a pessimistic outcome and go, they're not gonna say yes, you can start putting all these kind of different biases together. And I think that another one that kind of works together is pessimism bias and loss aversion, where we feel losses feel psychologically twice as worse as the alternative gaining it. Losing 10 pounds walking through East London, where's that tenner, feels worse than finding 20 pounds on the floor. There's a study that was done on 2 groups of people. Half were given a mug and half were given a chocolate bar. And although they were equated to be the similar value, if you offered them to swap, they wouldn't. And I joke going, the person with the mug would go, well, I'm not gonna have a cup of tea and a chocolate bar, am I? You're like, all right. Then you go to the other side and you talk to the chocolate bar people, they go, well, I can't eat a fucking mug. So once you have hold of something, it's a lot harder to give it up. And then that plays in with sunk cost fallacy. But with the loss aversion thing, Say you're in a job that you don't find rewarding, you've now got pessimism bias. I'm going to leave and hate the job more. Or you feel the psychological pain of losing your existing salary and safety net or comfort. You worry about losing that more than you can the idea of gaining something better, like a better work-life balance or whatever it is. So with the writing of the books, really what I'm doing is finding flaws in the way we think about things and bringing to people's attention how they come together. Like the loss aversion, psychological pain of losing things, we know objectively is something that we need to worry about. So then we look at sunk cost fallacy where, hey guys, just to let you know that you're going to struggle to walk away from things that you've put time, effort and energy into, and you're going to make bad decisions based off not the fact it's a good idea, but you're making a decision based on your previous investment. So we've all had friends in toxic relationships and we say to them, why are you still with this guy? And they're, oh, we've been together 4 years. They're using their previous investment as a reason to remain invested, not whether or not that's a serving relationship. So then we've got sunk cost fallacy, we've now got loss aversion. The fear of losing the toxic partner is causing more psychological distress than the idea of gaining someone else. And it's all of these things together combined with societal things and everything else that gives people this illusion that they don't have confidence. And even just bringing to people's attention these fallacies, we can start to break down and give them the understanding of why they feel this way. Because even though we're more connected digitally than ever, I don't feel like we share enough genuine emotions. And the fact that so many of us can seem fearless or confident because of the way we portray ourselves may make people feel they're very unique in having fears, in worrying about negative outcomes and in worrying about losing things, when the truth is, if we can let people know that we all feel the same, we can all work together to dismantle these beliefs to make decisions easier to make.
Yeah, I think definitely social media seems to show us all of these people in our life now, hundreds of thousands that have skyrocketed confidence. Whereas back in my day when I was on my block in San Diego in the 80s, like I didn't meet that many people that had confidence. Maybe I'd see a Rocky movie or a magazine cover, but I didn't have these interactions like on social where now I can see someone that can pretty much do anything in the world. And now they're on my show. So I got like the Dan Bilzerians and the best boxers in the world, the best writers in the world, and they do make you feel like you're lacking sometimes, when in fact they're just normal people as well. You just happen to see that one thing they do really well, and they're probably very insecure about a lot of that stuff too. So that's a real issue. I want to just get back to this thought of engineering risk, because this is something I struggled with for a long time. And I went to school as an engineer. I got a mechanical engineering degree at MIT, and they basically teach you to make sure that the plane doesn't fall out of the sky, the bridge doesn't break. And so you take this, bias towards failure and you magnify it, because as an engineer, your job is literally to make sure these things don't happen. But I found myself, when I started this show, I was in a real risk-averse situation. And it wasn't until I met one of my mentors, Dan Pena, the $1 trillion man, who I both love and hate equally, where he basically said, you need to be taking more risk in your life. And you need to engineer risk back into your life, because what you'll find out is most of the fears are unfounded, and the wins will just out-magnify all of it. And most people will forget about your losses and just remember your wins. And that's allowed me to do things that I never would have imagined doing, like running for mayor in 2020, like things that I would have never imagined. I signed myself up for a boxing match earlier this year at the O2 Arena when Martin Ford asked me to go on his card. I was 51 years old. I'm telling you, James, when I was 41 and in better shape physically, I would have been mentally unprepared to do that. But once I understood my mind, I thought, wait a second, okay, it's 3 rounds. Okay, I get KO'd on television and it's on YouTube forever. But like, what's the worst that can happen? But the 41-year-old Brian, he couldn't handle that. I would have been terrified to do that. But now I can look at it in my brain and say, okay, you got about, how many more years you got left? 30 years left? You want to make this an incredible life. Well, then you're going to have to engineer that risk into your life. And maybe from the outside, that looks like confidence.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.